My name is Ayush Shalavadi. You're watching Primetime on Bloomberg Quint. Let's have a look at today's headlines. Ajay Piramal sold most of FlashNet Info Solutions assets within months of acquiring the company from Piyush Goyal, show company filings with the MCA. Congress MPs withdraw their plea challenging the rejection of impeachment motion against Chief Justice of India. Arun Jaitley says the Congress wants a continuing sword to hang on the Chief Justice of India and the apex court. Power sector lenders drop a plan B to deal with the stress, propose an asset management company to take over all the debt-trapped projects. That's a Bloomberg Quint exclusive. Vijay Mallya faces a legal setback in the UK. A London court rejects his plea to stop Indian banks from seizing assets worth $1.55 billion. US President Donald Trump will announce his decision on the Iran deal at 11:30 p.m. tonight, Indian time. The consequences will be felt from the war zones in the Middle East to even the oil markets. Let's start with the legal and political battle that's rocked the Supreme Court. Congress parliamentarians today withdrew their plea in the Supreme Court that challenged the rejection of the impeachment notice against the Chief Justice of India, Deepak Mishra. The petitioners said they won't argue the matter till there's clarity on whose directions the Constitution bench was set up. Arpan Chaturvedi sums up all the action from court today.
Well, this petition was a challenge against the rejection of the impeachment motion which was filed by the opposition parties and was rejected by the Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman. This motion was against the CJI, and when the hearing started today, Mr. Kapil Sibal, who was appearing on behalf of the petitioners, said that before they go on to argue on the merits of the case, they would first like to know as to on what basis was this five-judge bench set up. Mr. Sibal's point was that whenever a reference to a constitution bench happens, that happens through a judicial order in cases where there's a need to interpret substantial question of law related to the Constitution of India. And he said this is one of those examples where an administrative order was passed and they would like to know who passed this order and would like to have a copy of the order so that if they want, they can challenge it in a court of law. And the bench, of course, Justice Sikri said that of course they agree that this is an unprecedented case and asked Mr. Sibal that you go on, continue on the merit of the case, and this issue of who has passed the order and a copy of the order, that can be also decided. But Mr. Sibal's point was that they would first like to have a copy of the administrative order so that they know that on what basis and by who was this constitution bench set up. And once, of course, this argument went on for a while, and later, of course, Mr. Sibal said that if he is not given a copy of the administrative order, he would like to withdraw his petition, and after that, of course, the bench allowed him to withdraw the petition and passed an order saying that dismissed as withdrawn.
All right, just to understand what's been happening in court, we're joined by Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate. He joins us on the phone line, and we're also joined by Nikhil Mehra. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on Prime Time. Mr. Hegde, I'd like to start off by asking you what you make of these developments. Some would view this as Mr. Sibal and team backtracking to some extent, but the fact that, what they mentioned was who referred the petition to the five-judge bench. They said it was their constitutional right to know. What I want to understand from you, Mr. Hegde, is also considering what Mr. Jaitley has said about forum shopping or bench shopping. Do you think there was a constitutional right for them to know what happened in this case, Mr. Hegde?
See, this is an unprecedented situation. At each stage, whatever is done sets a precedent one way or the other. Now, normally, a matter goes to the Constitution bench after a bench of 2 judges or 3 judges applies its judicial mind. By that, I mean that they have a hearing in court, and after hearing a matter in court, they say, look, there is some question of constitutional law of importance which has not been hitherto ruled upon. Therefore, let us send it to 5 judges. This presupposes that a petition is filed, it comes up in the normal course before 2 judges, and then they've applied the mind. Here, nothing of that sort happened. Here, the petition was filed, the registry didn't place it before 2 judges, but using his administrative powers, the Chief Justice of India assigned a bench of 5 judges to hear it out straight at the first instance. The point which Mr. Sibal was implicitly making was, if the Chief Justice on his own motion decided administratively as to where his case would be decided. If any other administrative authority did it as, on its own motion, a court would have set it aside. Because after all, when any person is interested one way or the other in any cause, he generally does not take any administrative decision regarding that case. So therefore, Sybil and team obviously asked, who was it who referred it to the Constitution bench? Can we have the order? And it may be that we want to challenge that order.
Right, Mr. Hegde.
The bench declined that.
Right.
And therefore they said that they would not want even the main petition to be decided by the
Right,
bench.
Mr. Hegde, and that's exactly the point that I want to come to. Was it well within their right to ask for something like this? Or this being an administrative order, is there some provision in law perhaps which backed their claim to ask for something like this? Or was it just a matter of procedure?
Administrative orders can be are passed by a whole host of people, including judges. And all administrative orders can be challenged on the judicial side. So therefore, they wanted to know by what order was this matter sent directly to 5 judges, ignoring the fact that normally these matters first come up on the judicial side before a division bench, before there is any reference made.
All right, Mr. Hegde, now I want to bring in Nikhil Mehra on this as well. Nikhil, now you've been very vocal about this on Twitter, and anyone who'd go on to your Twitter timeline would understand what you were saying. But just to put things in a nutshell, essentially, you do think that past actions by Sybil and team were very questionable, one, and two, you also think that they want an excuse to select the bench for themselves. And in a situation like this, would you say that, essentially the principles of natural justice weren't followed, Nikhil?
Look, let me clarify all of this. I think there are two separate things here. One, I'm largely in concurrence with Mr. Hegde that if an administrative order is passed, then that administrative order can be challenged. What I'm surprised by is the withdrawal of the petition. Now, it may be that you are aggrieved by the fact that a bench has been set up, but any kind of legal question can be raised before that very bench. So raise the very issue of the validity of the Constitution or the establishment of that bench. Before that very bench, it would have had to either withdraw or pass the matter on to another bench. But I'm surprised at the withdrawal of the case altogether. Because if you are, this is a matter in which, from the start, a number of legal luminaries have been saying that the impeachment motion was politically motivated and had very little legal basis. You've now brought it to court on essentially a legal issue. So I think it was incumbent, because you treat it as so important, to actually argue the case out. Now, I know it is listed directly before a 5-judge bench. There may be no precedent, but there seems to be a rule in the Supreme Court Handbook of Procedure under Chapter 4, Rule 3. But like I said, the real issue is, why would you withdraw the petition? You could raise all of these issues. If the order is not being given to you immediately, it can be given to you during the course of the hearing. So why withdraw the petition?
Right, Nikhil, and I think that's a valid point. But just to wrap things up, what would the right course of action be in such a case? Perhaps, well, the fact that they've withdrawn it now that's a reality. But the questions that they've raised, the ones about it being an administrative order and wanting to get more information on that, like I was asking Mr. Hegde, do you think some of those are valid concerns?
Look, this is all coming down to the issue of the master of the roster and the Chief Justice being a judge in his own cause. The real core question then is the constitution of a bench? And firstly, is this constitution of the bench an act of selection in itself, and therefore is it a substantive issue, and therefore would it amount to a violation of natural justice? Because what appears to have happened here is this. We must go back to the press conference conducted by the remaining 4 members of the collegium. Now, I was fully in support of the fact that they had certain grouses with the system, but if you go to the press, then you must go whole hog to change the system. Now, today you have something that originates against the Chief Justice in terms of an impeachment motion. The Chief Justice is compromised because he can't be a judge in his own cause. The other 4 have indicated that, natural justice may be violated even if they are sitting there. So what does the Chief Justice do? He goes to the next 5 senior most. Is that really an act of selection or an act of propriety to say, well, ordinarily what they had been asking was, if the Chief Justice is a judge in his own cause, then we should go to judge number 2 and seek a bench. So the Chief Justice has passed an administrative order saying, well, none of us can hear it, so why don't you go to the next file? So, this is an arguable point. It would have been best if it was, in fact, argued further. To say that we will not proceed merely because the order is not being provided to us, I think they're a disservice to everybody who wants this issue to be resolved once and for all.
Fair enough, Nikhil, and I really appreciate you joining us and sharing those views. Mr. Hegde, thanks so much for speaking to us as well on Bloomberg Quint. And I think some of those points are well taken. Now, moving on, Indian tycoon Vijay Mallya has lost a lawsuit in the United Kingdom filed by Indian banks. The banks sought to collect over $1.55 billion amidst allegations that he committed a massive fraud. Bloomberg News' Anthony Aarons joins us now live. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us. Take us through the highlights of this court order and what kind of a setback this really is for Vijay Mallya.
Well, it was very difficult today because a copy of the ruling wasn't available. So we just had to go with some brief remarks by the judge and arguments by the lawyers. But what became very quickly clear at the hearing was that Dr. Mallya lost both his claim to dismiss the UK enforcement of the underlying Indian lawsuits from the Debt Recovery Tribunal and to dismiss the worldwide freezing order of $1.5 billion against his assets.
Right, Anthony, and any other clarity in terms of what, how this case is going to proceed forward? Any particular dates that really were mentioned in today's hearing?
Yeah, the High Court judge dismissed Dr. Mallya's request to appeal. Now, that's a bit of a formality in UK courts. What that means now is Dr. Mallya has to go directly to the Court of Appeal and ask the Court of Appeal for permission to appeal. That'll take about 3 weeks. But in the meantime, he was not granted a stay of execution, which means the banks can immediately try to enforce the $1.5 billion in judgments that they have. So they can go and try to seize assets or whatever steps they want. One of the lawyers said afterwards they'll take any steps needed to go after the assets.
Right, Anthony, really appreciate you joining us live on Bloomberg Quint and sharing that update. Now, Ajay Piramal sold most of Flashnet Info Solutions assets within months of acquiring the company from Piyush Goyal, show company filings with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. But there are some questions that remain unanswered in the sale of Flashnet's assets. Here's a timeline for you.
In July 2014, BJP politician Piyush Goyal sold his company Flashnet Info Solutions to businessman Ajay Piramal. Flashnet was founded as an internet services and consultancy firm, but by the time it was sold, the company made no operational revenue. All it had was some assets. Piramal paid 47.8 crore rupees to Goyal for Flashnet. It told Bloomberg Quint it bought the company not just for its assets in real estate, but more for the investments made by it in the other companies. These were good investments in the current as well as in the long run, Piramal said. But was the valuation justified? Piramal told Bloomberg Quint the flat's market value was 10.1 crore rupees. The investment in listed shares was worth 4.47 crore rupees, and the cash, mutual fund units, trade receivables all added up to about 4.42 crore rupees. But what about the remaining 28.81 crores? Did Piramal Estates pay that much for Flashnet's investment in shares of 6 unlisted companies? Curiously, by the end of financial year 2014 and 15, Flashnet had sold the flat back to Piyush Goyal for 12 crore rupees. It also sold all the listed shares and most of the unlisted shares for 7.95 crore rupees. That leaves important questions unanswered. Why did Piramal buy Flashnet and then in a matter of months sell the company's key real estate property back to Goyal? Why did Piramal pay 28.86 crore rupees for unlisted equity investments when the sale of most of them yielded just about 3.48 crore rupees? If Piramal's main interest in Flashnet was the equity investments, then why sell most of them also in a matter of months?
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's what seems to have driven lenders to come out with a plan B to deal with all the stress in the power sector. SBI Caps has drafted the proposal. Vishwanath Nair sums up the development for you.
after the government failed to garner support for its power sector resolution plan from various stakeholders, lenders led by State Bank of India have now come up with a blueprint for a new plan which may help them better manage the 1.8 lakh crore that is stuck with stressed power assets. State Bank of India has actually taken a mandate from all the lenders to lead their interests in these discussions, and along with the alternative investment funds and pension funds, State Bank of India will be floating an asset management company. Essentially, this asset management company has been created to house some of these stressed power assets and then eventually look for buyers who can then pay money for the equity of these power assets, and then the banks associated with them can be repaid. This AMC will firstly take equity that banks might be holding because of the strategic debt restructuring in some of these power assets. It will also, banks, after converting the unsustainable portion of these companies' debt into equity, that equity will also move to the AMC. The AMC will also purchase some equity that the promoters of these power assets might be holding at a significant haircut. All in all, the AMC has to take in controlling equity that is at least 51% or more, so that they can fully control the management of these companies. So that these companies are running and stay as a going concern, the AMC will also be allowed to appoint operational agents such as PFC, REC as well as NTPC, who will just ensure that the basic functions of the company are running. State Bank of India will also be required to take assurances from each state government that the distribution companies in these states do not end up cancelling power purchase agreements, which may put these companies at risk. But most of all, State Bank of India will need to take permission from Reserve Bank of India so that this plan can actually move forward, and that banks can get some kind of leeway on the NPA management guidelines, which the Reserve Bank of India had brought out in February. Remember, under those guidelines, these assets, after 180 days of resolution period, will have to move to the National Company Law Tribunal, and banks are afraid that in the absence of buyers available at this point in time, companies that go to NCLT may end up seeing large haircuts for the banks involved. So it is imperative that SBI gets some kind of approval from the Reserve Bank of India to implement such a plan, and that it brings in all the stakeholders on board so that this plan can move forward.
SBI held a meeting of all the lenders in Mumbai, and they are working out on what could be the level of sustainable debt, what could be the rating of this, and then what are the other regulatory issues which Ministry of Power can resolve once the resolution plan is there.
Now, the power sector lenders plan B notwithstanding, the government is pulling out all stops to revive the debt-laden sector. Here's Power Secretary that you just heard right now talking about why the RBI is unwilling to come to the rescue of distressed power plants.
I mean, it was always the lenders who had to come together to form a SPV or in whatever asset management company they wanted to house the assets. NTPC was never supposed to be part of this SPV or the joint venture company which was being talked about, because NTPC is going to operate some of these plants, as desired by the lenders or the SPV, proposed asset management company and all. So it was never like that. NTPC did a bidding on its own and some people showed interest, but even that has not come through. So, I mean, if it has to be, the problem needs to be attacked from all the sides, and we expect that if SBI puts the pressure and all lenders come together, we definitely would like to see that some of these assets come out of the stress. We had initially looked at about 40,000 megawatts of coal-based capacity. About 10,000 of that has been resolved, and 20,000 is under discussion, what SBI and other lenders are looking at. 8 to 10,000 megawatts is the capacity which we feel perhaps is beyond this thing, because there's hardly any progress in those projects. Power sectoral issues may be seen little differently, on which RBI has said that, they generally, as a regulator, bank regulator, they don't look at the sectoral issues. It's for the Ministry of Power to look at those issues which can be resolved.
Now, the government nominee on the ICICI Bank board skipped the bank board meeting both yesterday and today. Why did this happen? Nikunjori tells us in this report.
The government has distanced itself from the ICICI Bank and Videocon loan issue, with the government nominee on ICICI Bank's board skipping the board meeting which was scheduled on May 7 and May 8. The government believes that attending the board meeting would in a way endorse the board's view, which let Chanda Kochar continue as its MD and CEO. The government believes that if it raises any concerns, those concerns would not be taken up by the board and would be overruled by the other board members. The government has said that it would take an informed decision and a stand on this ICICI Bank and Videocon loan issue once steps are taken by the regulator, here being Reserve Bank of India, and once the investigating agencies' inputs are out.
Now, after a strong start to the day, markets ended the day on a flat note. ICICI Bank, SBI and Axis Bank led the gains, while Infosys, HDFC Bank and L&T lost the most. The broader markets had a mixed close. The Nifty small cap closed with gains of 0.6%, while the Nifty mid cap ended with cuts of 0.1%. Now, Maruti Suzuki India today said it is asking customers of 52,686 new Swift and Baleno models to undertake a service campaign to inspect for a possible fault in the brake vacuum hose. Now, essentially, that means your braking system. Yatin Mota gets us more about the details.
We have the PTI report which is suggesting that auto major Maruti Suzuki is recalling over 50,000 Baleno cars over faulty brake system. Now this relates to a fault in brake vacuum hose. Basically this is a rubber hose which creates and releases vacuum while applying brake. So that has been found faulty, and Maruti has at a dealership level announced that they will be looking at customers which have bought the car between December 2017 to a period of March 16, 2018, and they will be covered in this campaign, and they will be checked for the fault as far as the brakes are concerned. If you look at Maruti Suzuki, bulk of their growth currently comes in from 3 flagship models, which is the Baleno, Brezza, as well as the new Swift Desire, and probably something on the recall front, especially for the brake system, could dampen the sentiments of the consumer. However, if you look at Baleno, the order book for Maruti Suzuki remains healthy, and the waiting period remains over 1 month. So probably concerns coming in for Baleno. Let's see how really the stock reacts for the trade moving forward.
Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked his team to crunch numbers and figure out how many jobs were really created in the 4 years of his rule. Remember, jobs growth remains a key factor watched by the nation ahead of next year's elections. Vrishti Beniwala, Bloomberg News, sums up the development.
The Modi government is going to complete 4 years in office this May 26, and to showcase their success in these 4 years, the government has planned to tell people how many jobs they have created in these 4 years. So all the government departments have been asked to mathematically work out how many jobs were created by their projects and programs and its impact on GDP. We have spoken to some officials who have received this letter from the government. Some of them are saying it's very difficult for them to compute how many jobs were created because the government intervention in their sectors is minimum, and only the private sector will be able to give these numbers. And the second is some of the other officials are saying it is very, very hard to mathematically compute these numbers, and findings of any such project are not going to be accurate. So, and we should remember it is very important for Modi to show there has been job creation in the country under his rule, because he came back to power in 2014 on the promise of creating millions of jobs in the country. He faces an election again next year, and that is why the debate on job creation in the country has been intensifying. Yesterday in Karnataka, Modi said joblessness is a legacy of Congress government.
Now, former Congress President Sonia Gandhi today accused the Modi government of discriminating against Congress-ruled Karnataka and questioned his slogan of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Sonia Gandhi, who held her first rally after 2 years today, also hit out at Prime Minister Modi on the formation of the institution of Lokpal that was proposed to be set up. In return, Prime Minister Modi hit out at the Congress government, saying that the Congress believes in a divide and rule philosophy and not Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas.
ये कांग्रेस की सरकार संप्रदाय में विघटन करो, जातियों में विघटन करो, मत भावना के अंदर विघटन करो, सब कुछ तहस नहस कर दो, बांटो और राज करो, तोड़ो, एक को दूसरे से लड़ाओ, यही उनका खेल चला।
जिन जिन राज्यों में सूखा पड़ा, मोदी सरकार ने उन राज्यों को हजारों करोड़ दिए, लेकिन कर्नाटक के किसानों के घावों पर नमक छिड़कते हुए सबसे कम पैसा दिया। मोदी जी, क्या यही है आपका सबका साथ, सबका विकास?
Now, while opinion polls conducted in Karnataka over the last few weeks indicate a lead for the Indian National Congress and Chief Minister Siddharamaiah in the coming elections, he's up against a 30-year history that Karnataka shares with Kerala of not giving a government a second full mandate. Kaushik Vaidya, Bloomberg Quinn, joins us on the show to show us how power in Karnataka has been a seesaw that swung every 4 to 5 years.
The Congress enjoyed a near uninterrupted run in power in Karnataka from the state's formation in 1956 all the way up to 1983. In 83 is when the Janata Dal, led by Ramakrishna Hegde, unseats the Congress government. Hegde goes on to retain power in the 1985 election, but that's when things get interesting. From that point, no ruling party has retained power in Karnataka with a full majority. That's all the way up to 2013. The Janata Dal, which had won in 1985, lost in 1989, and the Congress installed Virendra Patil as Chief Minister. 5 years later, the Janata Dal was back, with H.D. Deve Gowda becoming Chief Minister of Karnataka. But remember what happens 2 years after that. Deve Gowda moves to Delhi as Prime Minister for a brief stint. So come elections in 1999, the Janata Dal has split, one half has gone to the BJP, and the Janata Dal weakened that the Gowda left with falls all the way down to 10 seats, and S.M. Krishna becomes Chief Minister of Karnataka. Forward to 2004, even S.M. Krishna is unable to retain power. All three parties, the BJP, the Congress and the JDS, are all below that halfway mark or the majority mark of 113. To keep the BJP out, the JDS and the Congress get into an alliance. Dharam Singh of the Congress and then H.D. Kumaraswamy, that's Deve Gowda's son, served certain stints as Chief Minister. That didn't last the full term either. You had Kumaraswamy pulling out of that alliance and for a full total of 1 week offered support to the BJP. So when the 2008 elections came around, the BJP was able to form a government on its own for the first time in South India with B.S. Yediyurappa as Chief Minister. How did that go forward? Come 2013, Yediyurappa was out of the BJP, so were some other leaders. So the BJP's tally goes from 110 all the way down to 40, and the Congress forms a government with Siddharamaiah as Chief Minister, a term that's ending this month.
Now, of course, we speak more about the Karnataka polls on Prime Time Debate, where we'll be joined by Shabina Sultana, spokesperson for the Congress Party, and Yashas BS, spokesperson for the BJP. Now, the whole world is waiting for the US president's decision on the 2015 Iran Accord. Bill Farries of Bloomberg News joins us now. Bill, thanks so much for joining us. Now, I know this is the million-dollar question, but what can we expect from Trump today? Or let me rephrase that. Would you say he'll nix the Iran Accord or fix it?
Well, all indications we've had is that the president is going to nix the accord, that he's going to withdraw the United States from this really signature achievement of his predecessor, Barack Obama. Trump has long said, even as a presidential candidate, that he thought the deal was terrible, that it left too many loopholes for Iran's ballistic missile program, for its behavior in other parts of the Middle East, and that he wants to get out of it. This is really the first time he's had a decision to make about sanctions on his desk that he's making early. In the past, he's always waited till the last minute. He wasn't due to make a decision until May 12th. He announced yesterday he'd be making the decision in about 3 hours here in Washington. There's been a stream of foreign leaders in Washington over the past few weeks. The German Chancellor, the French President, and this week UK Foreign Minister Boris Johnson was here. They've all argued for the U.S. to stay in the agreement. But they've also all left shaking their heads and saying that they think that the president has made his decision to leave.
Right, Bill, really appreciate you joining us live on Bloomberg Quint with that update. Now, Moving on, Dimon chooses to ignore Donald Trump's tweets and focus more on the work done on the ground. In a conversation with Bloomberg News' Stephen Engels in Beijing, Dimon also said it is possible that U.S. growth and inflation grew fast enough to prompt the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates more than many anticipate, and it would be wise to prepare for benchmark yields to climb to 4%. Listen in.
You got to prepare for all possibilities and probabilities. So there is a possibility that growth accelerates, that inflation accelerates. It's higher than you expect. The Fed raises rates a little bit more than you expect, both in the short end, in which, in my opinion, might force the 10-year up, not down like in the past. And so you can easily deal with 4% bonds. And I think people should be prepared for that. Again, if it's because America is strong and healthy, that's, I would call it almost more like normalization. The other thing I pointed out is by the end of the year, the government in total, the Fed plus the deficit, we have to finance $400 billion a quarter. That's a lot. That's a huge shift in the past. And eventually the other central banks of the world will reverse their buying of bonds. And those things may cause more volatility, higher rates, in a way we don't fully understand because we never had QE, we've never had the reversal. But again, as long as the world growing is more important than that.
All right, that's about all the time that we have on this bulletin. But remember, there's a Karnataka conversation only on Primetime Debate. Stay tuned.